Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Lovely.
Is that lovely?
Pretty sexy. Baby, don't leave me.
No, I won't.
Just say you need me.
Hola, hola. This is your boy Tico Trent, and I'm gonna talk about the parallels between slavery days in the U.S. and the current days of Me Too. I'm a firm believer of history always repeating itself. Like, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you slice it, if you don't learn from your past, it has a habit of repeating itself, if you know what I mean. And the irony to that is, this is pretty much a repeat of the past. And I'm going to start by saying that, in all technicality, this whole entire rape culture, I mean, I always do blame women for the rape culture because they do perpetuate it for the most part by acting and doing the stuff that they do, if you know what I mean. They perpetuate it. I'm not condoning the people who do it to them, but at the end of the day, they perpetuate it by the way they dress. And like, no, we live in a fucked up society, so there are people in the society, a small percentage of people in the society, not all men in the society, but I would say about like anywhere between, I'll say 10% of society are fucked up people, and they do fucked up things to people for no reason whatsoever. So the problem is, though, those 10% of fucked up people who do fucked up things to people still exist in this world. It don't matter how many good men there is, there's still always a fucked up person who's going to do some foul, ridiculous craziness to somebody, to another human being, and make it seem like it's inhumane, if you know what I mean. That is the problem that I have with society as a whole, because they believe that they should be able to do all this stuff, but our society isn't quite set up for it. We're not a utopia, so not everything is unicorns and rainbows, so you can't do stuff like that because there's still that 10% of the population that will do some very, very ridiculous, harmful stuff to the human body, if you know what I mean. So there's that aspect of the whole entire rape culture. But then on top of that, you also got to go back in history because the sad part about it is most of the best, craziest laws were passed because a black man would get drunk or get high or do something or do this and then rape your white women. So on top of women perpetuating this, you have the whole entire government perpetuating this whole entire rape culture, if you know what I mean. So now, apparently, all black men are rapists because that's the narrative of history, and that's how they pretty much paint it. Black men as a whole, if you know what I mean, because apparently we couldn't control ourselves, and apparently we were rapists and this, that, and the other, which is sad. But the sad part about it is, like, all those cases that they always went back and looked at, the black guy was innocent, despite the fact that he lost his life. His whole entire town got burned down to the ground. His whole entire family got decimated. But, we figured out that he was innocent after the fact. Well, you killed like over anywhere between 50 to hundreds of people, thousands of people over a false accusation, which is really, really sad once you think about it. So now, I don't find it shocking in the least bit that nowadays this Me Too movement is going on, because technically it's a direct parallel, and it's a pretty much history repeating itself and remanifesting in a feminist movement. Not only is it just black men rape people, now it's all men are rapists now, apparently, according to feminists. Let that sink in. Now, am I shocked by this? No. Because it's been happening to niggas for a long time. If you know what I mean. It's been happening to niggas in America for a very long time. So I'm not shocked by this in the least bit, that this actually manifests like this. Which is funny and sad, because it was bound to happen, and we in America, we tend to be short-sighted and we don't seem to learn from our history. So I'm not ever shocked when shit like this actually manifest in any way, shape, or form, if you know what I mean. And it's sad that it happens this way, but it is what it is. Learn from our history. If we just had to learn from our history and stop trying to be like, well, let the past be the past. Let the past be the past. This and the other. And this and the other. And the thing I always found funny about the let the past be the past is when it comes to bad shit, it's let the past be the past. Or, you weren't living in those days anyway. This and the other. This and the other. But it's okay to reenact the Civil War. Dress up in everything and reenact a war that you pretty much lost. Or won, depending on what side you're on. Let that shit sink in. You want us to forget the past, but it's okay to reenact the very war that was the determining factor for freedom of slaves, despite the fact that they weren't really free and really have autonomy until like much later, which really sucks. But yeah, it's just stuff like that just is just so sickening, if you know what I mean. But literally, it is history repeating itself and manifesting out of the feminist movement, if you know what I mean. Before it was the cuck white men who believed these white women that these black men raped them, despite the fact that, when you walked in a room, you seen her bouncing on it like she was at the rodeo show. But it was the black man that was raping her. Or if she was just having a bad day and somebody happened to look at her wrong. See? And that shit went on. That was what happened to Emmett Till. He looked at her. He didn't even touch the woman. He happened to look her way, and he got accused of rape. Like, that's literally legit stuff that's going on today, if you know what I mean. Like, people are being accused of rape for looking at a woman. It's rape if you talk to a woman. It's sexual assault if you do all this stuff to a woman. And it's like, you don't even have to touch the woman anymore. If you breathe wrong near a woman, it's sexual assault anymore these days, if you know what I mean. And that's the sad, cold reality of the day. And it has parallels to slave days because you pretty much created the beast. You pretty much created the beast. Now you're complaining about wanting to put it back in a bottle. Well, it's a little late now. If you wouldn't have took the necessary steps that you did in our past to do what you did, you wouldn't have to worry about this today, or you would have a better handle on it today. But the fact of the matter is, you don't. Now you're victims to the same shit that black people were victims to way back when, and throughout the many years up until now. Like, hell, even after the slavery days, black men were accused of this shit all the way up until now, if you know what I mean. And the sad part about it is, back when it was in slavery days, everybody was innocent. Now it's like, what, 2%? 2% of the people were actually guilty. Black people are guilty of this rape, if you know what I mean. But like, it was fine to just stick a crime on them because it was just fine to stick a crime on them. But the neat thing I've always found funny about the white community is, as long as it's not their community, we can look the other way. The minute it started happening to their community, now we gotta start, making changes and start figuring out stuff, or, we might want to start walking away and, stuff like that when it's the white community. It's kind of like how when the drug epidemic actually hit the black community, white people will say, I don't understand why they don't say no, or they just quit, or they just don't do this, or they don't do this. Like, you just pretty much just made it so that, it was just a black problem, and if you know what I mean. And it's sad that it's got to be that way, but y'all literally pretty much batted it off like, well, the black people should do this, well, the black people should do that, or no, the black people should do this. Fast forward to today. Opioid epidemic. We need to open up rehabilitation centers. It's a disease now. It's all this now. But when black people were going through it, it was just a black problem, and they need to better themselves. And the only reason why they're going through it because they have no education and this, that, and the other. Now that y'all going through this now, it's an epidemic and it's a disease, and we gotta, open up rehabilitation centers, and we gotta do this, that, and the other, and we gotta have a war on. We gotta, fight against opioids being passed out for no reason, this, that, and the other. Now all of a sudden it matters now because it's your neighborhood. But when it was the black neighborhood, it was perfectly fine. That's what I'm talking about when I say history repeating itself, because it's all fine and good when it happens to the black community. The minute that it happens to the white community, Now we got to start putting stuff in the DSM. We got to start making up new terms. We got to start making up new guidelines to figure out if you got this or not now. We got to open up rehabilitation centers for this crap. Just stuff like that in general. And I've always found it funny how that actually works. Because had this not hit the white community, it wouldn't even be a thing in a SDM at all. It wouldn't be a disease. It wouldn't be none of that. It wouldn't be any of that shit had it not hit the white community. But the fact of the matter that it hit the white community and is crippling the white community, it's a disease or a mental illness or, this, that, and the other. So now we got to actually address it now. You see how that works? You see how that works? But I digress.